1, 0. Okay, it's briefing screen. Hey guys, welcome to another dual commentary with Clazzert and Moltrap. Holy crap. Sheesh! We'll see if we can get these out in time. This is going to be on Loki II between Cal and Jaedong. This is actually Diggity and Clazzert, not Moltrap. Moltrap's still not on vacation. He's working hard doing his master's degree. Looks like we're going to have Cal starting in the upper right-hand corner in orange. Bottom left-hand corner, we have Jaedong, which I think was blue. I'm going to get another look at that. No, it looks like it's kind of, no, yeah, blue. We'll see how this works, because I really feel like this kind of maps that works to Jaedong's favor. Cal's very good in small micromanagement situations, where Jaedong can kind of really power. I mean, he starts up with 12 hatch almost every single game, and this time he can have a protected 12 hatch if he wants it. And we've seen him go into a lot of 3 hatch builds, mostly recently, just so he can have a lot of tools. Last game, being a little, I feel kind of like over-aggressive. He was trying to win the game, I think, a little bit earlier than he needed to, going Spines upgrade instead of Carapace. I think if he had gone Carapace, he still might have pulled the game. But Cal playing very excellently. What did you think about the last game, Plaz?
Yeah, you made a great call there. I have to say, I was completely, well, I'm still half asleep, but I was fascinated by that game. I have to say, I thought Jaedong and Jaedong actually using a drone to block off his ramp against the protoss scout. So this is going to be interesting. So Cal's going to be forcing the second probe out, and it's going to be vital he does that because he's not going to know what Jaedong's doing. Jaedong might be going for another all-in build here, and this is going to be kind of foolish of him, and that would be the only reason I think he would block off that. And actually, no, it looks like he's going to expand. So it's good enough that he's blocking, because by doing this, his opponent doesn't know that Jaedong's going to be whether Jaedong is going for pool or whether Jaedong is going for a fast expand, and really the Protoss player is going to have to get at least a second probe out, or even possibly assume that his opponent is going to try and do a zergling rush, and therefore expend his resources accordingly. And I think it's a great move to do this, and I'm surprised that zerg players don't do it more often. I know it does cost a drone early on in the game to do that, to sacrifice a drone from your economy, but I think it's well worth the expense. And Jaedong actually putting down the spawning pool after his hatchery, and it'll be interesting whether he puts down the second hatchery now. Meanwhile, Cal looks like he's got his gateway up, and we'll see how Cal reacts to what Jaedong has done, whether he decides to get a second gateway down or not, or whether he's just going to continue on as he was. He certainly wasn't planning on fast expanding at the very least. So I've got to say that the last match fascinated me. I thought Jaedong's strategy adapted very well to Cal's strategy, going in for that drop, but I think Jaedong, as you said, was probably overconfident in his choice of build, and now Jaedong pushing the drone out. He obviously, the disadvantage obviously of using that drone to block it, he doesn't know what's coming from Cal. It looks like Cal has built his expansion in his protected main. Looks like Cal has gone for the Nexus quickly here, so it looks like we're going to be setting up for a macro game here. Both players opting for an expansion strategy, and I think this kind of gameplay probably suits Jaedong more than it suits Cal, and I think Jaedong's going to be able to cope fine with these incoming zealots, and Cal's actually not got a zealot in Jaedong's base, and Jaedong's going to be forced to bunch his drone. The probe almost gets taken out, but Cal managed to put it out in time, and Jaedong actually managed to lose a drone. Cal managed to take out 2 of Jaedong's drones. This is careless by Jaedong. That probe on very little health, surviving and actually helping the zealots do damage, and Jaedong's lost 2 drones critically there, and he doesn't need to surrender any advantage to Cal at all. And for me, the other thing about the previous game is the fact, and that Zealot actually trapped against the spawning pool, unfortunately for Cal, so that's going to be the end of that attack, and he actually did not fall for Jaedong's bait with that blocked drone. He decided to expand straight away and go for the Nexus. He didn't go for the second gateway, and I think that was a good move by Cal, and showing some real intelligent play from him there. But the thing for me was that Blue Storm is typically a Zerg stronghold. Zerg should win on Blue Storm, and I think Jaedong, having sacrificed that, has surrendered the momentum to Cal, who would have been not as high on confidence, and a beating from Jaedong, on Blue Storm, and perhaps would have been enough to break him and would have provided Jaedong with an easy victory in the finals. Instead, Jaedong committed himself and now finds himself having to play catch-up.
Yeah, I also find it interesting that Cal is blocking his front door with the 2 zealots. He didn't go for a Bisu build. He didn't decide to seal his front door and go for basically guaranteed 3 expansions into quick Corsairs. Instead, it looked like almost he was thinking about doing kind of a zealot push. Wanted to do kind of disrupt Jaedong's economy. I feel like he's that worried about Jaedong's ability to macro and kind of get into that mid game. I don't think he wants to face. I think where he wants to win the game is in the early game, and especially on maps like Loki II, he's at a severe disadvantage because I think Cal, his strong suit is early mid game victories, not whereas Jaedong's definite strong suit is kind of the mid late game and late game victories. I mean, he's just so strong with that, putting up the lair, it looks like, in that backfield, and that second hatchery, just to make sure it's even harder to scout it out. Gas going down just now, it looks like, actually, for Cal. I'm surprised by that. Actually, no, sorry, he had the second gas up. I was looking at the wrong base. He's getting now he's swinging into Corsair deck. This is somewhat an advantage for Cal, though, because he went that gateway first. Oftentimes, you don't end up with some actual attack units on the ground, so you can fall a little bit behind. Because he's not putting down that forge first, he is going to be able to get that tech out and have some ground forces. Looks like Hydralisk Den going down for Jaedong as well. Interesting. And sending in another scout, but that scout isn't going anywhere. Gonna get killed absolutely in the secondary. Actually, no, man, just slip it right back around and kind of retreat with it. But anyway, I still worry about kind of going into this. As you can see, Cal not really thinking about taking his third expansion. Just gonna stick in his second expansion. I still think that kind of holds to his mentality that he's still thinking about ending this in the mid game as opposed to the late game.
Yeah, and now Spire going up for Jaedong as well, and I think that's the absolute correct move by Jaedong. Last time he really overcommitted himself, and I think you're right as it comes to styles of play, not just styles of play, but also the ability of Zerg. I think Zerg obviously gets more powerful in the late game, especially when the Zerg reaches the late game earlier than their opponents. But as far as styles go, July Zerg is obviously the master of lair play. He's the master of winning games with drops. As you commented, Jaedong tried to almost pull a July there in the previous game, and it didn't work out for him. And I think Jaedong is best playing the game that he normally plays. I think he's good enough to be predictable and still win. I think even if he plays a predictable game, I think even if he goes for his standard build each time, I think he's good enough to actually be so good in that game that I don't think Cal is good enough to beat him. I think Bisu might be at his best, because we saw that with Savior, that even though Savior was playing so predictably a lot of the time, no one could touch him. Even though they knew Savior was going to 12 hatch, and they did their best to counter it, and still Savior came out with a win every single time. And I think Jaedong is just that good that he doesn't need to muck about, he doesn't need to commit himself to all-in builds. He can play a standard game and still be untouchable. So ineffective Corsair harass from Cal, but he did manage to get the scout in. But Jaedong's got the Spire up, and I think that's a great idea, because those Scourges will help him ensure that he doesn't give his opponent air superiority, which is obviously suicided on a map like this. And that Spire is actually now up and finished. This group of Zealots, he did have the Citadel of Udden up, I don't know if you noticed, but Cal had the Citadel of Udden going up, so we might see speed upgrade Zealots again from Cal here, but this time it's not going to bother Jaedong nearly as much, because he will have air support for those, and he's got Mutalisk out straight away, so he's going to have air support, and looks like it might be actually Jaedong who's going to try and take the air support, and this time he puts on a second Sunken as well, and those Mutalisks are going to just eat through those Zealots, so those Zealots aren't really not going to do much damage at all. So Jaedong landing the early punches in this game looks like he's giving himself a small advantage. It's just a question of how well he translates it, and usually Jaedong, the way Jaedong's been playing this season, I don't think it's an advantage he's going to surrender easily.
This is the second time in a row we're seeing Cal do that speed upgraded Zealot trick. I think he was hoping it would pay off for him again, instead of opting for the High Templar, and I think that might cost him this time. It looks like he's an Archon morphing in the background. He would already have a Templar out by now, and having to dedicate additional resources, which is going to cost him again. I feel like he's falling behind more and more in this match, because first of all, at this moment, he really does not have map control. It looks like he's going to try to push those Zealots in. Very nice job by Jaedong getting those units that were kind of off to the side, blocking off that front door, pulling his drones back through now, and I think he's going to be A-okay against this Zealot force. Obviously, Mule's going to be able to clean up what's left here. But still not letting basically the bulk of that Zealot force manage to run into his base, and going to be able to clean it up very nicely afterwards. But as I was saying, it's interesting in 4 cannons back. Actually, no, it looks like a Zealot managed to get into Jaedong's main, and it's doing a lot of, wow, took out, looks like it's already got 4 kills, going to go for a 5th kill. It doesn't look like Jaedong sees it. I guess he does not realize, but that Zealot is now running amok. Now he's got some Zerglings in the backfield to clean that up, but not before it's got 5 kills. Finally taking that Zealot out. But now, as you can see, Jaedong still, Cal still does not have that 3rd expansion up. He's facing a large Mutalisk force. He's kind of on the defensive. He does not have. He's being kind of forced to produce Corsairs at this point to try to regain kind of some map control. He has to wait and play on the defensive, chasing off those Mutalisks fairly easily there. Actually, no. It looks like Jaedong's going to engage, and we'll see if he. I think he's going to be able to take this out. Now having to pull back, but not before he was able to kill a Corsair. Man, those Mutalisks are really weak though. But he had to commit. What was that? 8 cannons or 7 cannons between his 2 expansions, which is just delaying that 3rd expansion even longer, and it looks like 2 evolution chambers up in the meantime. In the meantime, Jaedong has map control. He can start expanding. Cal really can't afford to move out. really feel like just kind of his choice of tactics, going for that early zealot, that kind of rush push. I think that kind of sacrificed the game for him. I'm surprised he played. I wouldn't call it all in, but I wouldn't call it. I don't think that was a wise decision to go on Loki II against a player like Jaedong.
Yeah, again, I don't think if Jaedong hadn't committed himself as much as he did on Blue Storm, it wouldn't have worked on Blue Storm either. As I said, I think Jaedong is good enough to beat these kind of tricks from Protoss players, and now that last Corsair for Cal is being chased on those Scourges.